Our project for the next hour is to talk about diabetes, the reversing of diabetes. Diabetes today is really one of the most devastating diseases affecting this country. It is, in terms of healthcare, it is the most expensive. It's over $200 billion per year that we spend on diabetes and its various complications. It affects nearly 20 million people in this country. And it's not just the diabetes itself, but diabetes results in complications and affects, it's almost everything else that goes wrong with us is made worse with diabetes. The most devastating, of course, our number one cause of death is heart disease. This cardiovascular arteriosclerotic disease. And in the next hour, we'll talk more about cholesterol and arteriosclerosis. But diabetics will have 4 times worse, more heart attacks and strokes than other people on the same bad diet and lifestyle that causes these diseases that we have in this country. Diabetes is the number one cause of adult blindness. Diabetes is the number one cause of renal failure, why you end up on dialysis. It's the number one cause of amputations. Today, 200 diabetics will have their leg cut off. And tomorrow, and every single day, about 200 more legs are lost because of diabetes. And it's on and on like that with all of the things that affects neuropathy, increases pneumonias, and really is just a very crippling, devastating condition. And, we said it's like 20 million, but then we start talking about pre-diabetes. And, well, that's another, 60, 70 million probably that really have the same disease. It just hasn't quite reached the point where we say, well, yeah, now it's a diabetes. But that's sort of a technical point on a progression. In other words, the amount of people that is affected by this is huge. And, of course, the effect, any of you which may suffer from it, church members, family members, by the way, our church isn't immune to diabetes. It is through our church. But the good news is this is actually a very reversible disease process. It's not just preventable, it's reversible. And we're going to take some time to look at that today. One of the most powerful statements Jesus made was, "You shall know the truth." What's the rest of that? "The truth shall set you free." Okay, before this hour is over, you will know the truth about diabetes. We're going to summarize it in 2 simple sentences. You remember those 2 sentences, you need everything you need to know to reverse someone's diabetes. This morning we were reminding how God uses suffering for our benefit. But we must remember God's will isn't for the human race to suffer. When he came here in person, what did he do? He spent more time healing the sick, relieving suffering, than he did preaching. And as we are called to follow in his footsteps and continue his work, we are called to carry on that same work of teaching and healing. And there's probably no better way to begin to reverse the effects of sin in someone's life than to start with their physical, mental conditions, then progress to the spiritual. Once they realize that, wow, you can change my life, then you're ready to move on to the other more theological steps of truth that can lead them into the full truth that God would have them to have. As you read those stories of Jesus healing, have you ever wished that you had that you could just, lay your hand on someone and be healed? Well, God has given us this same work, and in medical ministry, Ellen White makes a statement, a very powerful statement that says, we are to carry on that same work of healing and teaching, but that today we cannot work as Christ did with the miraculous, instant touch you, heal you type of thing like Jesus did, because of all of the counterfeit healings out there that Satan would like to do to deceive people, and that there would be confusion if we would do that. And so she said that God has marked out another way for us to carry on this same work. And then she goes on to describe our health message and bringing people back to the simple laws of health and how they can change it. You really have in your power the ability to reverse this. It's not just a theory. I spent many years working at Weimar Institute, and there's many other institutes around the country that are doing exactly the same type of thing. We bring people back to the simple lifestyle plan that God would have. We eat fruits, grains, vegetables. We go walking for exercise, breathe fresh air, drink water, get our sleep. And when you do that and you trust in God, what happens? These diseases go away. Why? Because we are reversing the cause of it. Yeah, because we're reversing that cause of that disease. Now, one thing we need to really change in our thinking, and not just the whole United States, America, we tend to think, we often confuse a symptom with a disease. You know what I mean by the difference between a symptom and a disease? Well, when it comes to diabetes, what do we think about? What is diabetes? High blood sugar. High blood sugar is a symptom of diabetes. It's not the cause. There is a metabolic derangement in the body that is this process. It's caused by bad lifestyle, causes the disease process. But the symptom of this metabolic derangement is your blood sugar level gets too high. Well, that's the thing that, as doctors, we can measure your blood sugar level, and so we want to control your blood sugar level, and we will give medications, insulin drugs, stuff to try to control that symptom. And we think we're controlling that symptom. You can manage diabetes all you want by controlling that symptom, and you haven't cured diabetes. The diabetes is still there. If you want to cure it, you've got to go back and deal with the cause of it. An analogy to that is another symptom, pain. Now, you can come into my emergency room, where I work as an ER doc, with a bad appendicitis. And one of the symptoms of that appendicitis is going to be severe pain in a certain spot right here. Now, I can give you enough morphine to relieve your pain. I can completely relieve your pain with enough morphine, and I could even send you home with some Vicodin or some oxycodone and send you home pain-free. Now, have I done you any good? No, because what was the cause of your pain? An inflamed appendix that was about to rupture. What do I really need to do for you? I need to pick up the phone and call the surgeon and get you into the OR so they can remove that before it ruptures, spreading, intestinal matter all over your abdomen, causing sepsis, and which could lead to your death. So we want to distinguish between the two. Treating a symptom is not the same as treating the cause. Controlling blood sugar in diabetes is like controlling pain. It's treating a symptom. It's not the disease. Now, we should control pain. We should control blood sugars. It's appropriate to control the symptoms, but realize the difference between controlling the symptom and treating the disease, because that's where the key comes for actually effectively helping and changing somebody. Okay, with that as background, now we're ready to look at reversing diabetes. And to do that, we're really going to have to understand the cause of diabetes and the derangement, what the real disease process is in the body. So to start with, we're going to draw a little picture here and follow this through for the lecture. If you draw this, if you're taking notes, if you draw this one picture, you'll have everything you need to understand and remember the process of diabetes. So, you ready? Okay. Now, everybody knows diabetes has to do with sugar. So we're going to draw sugar here. Now, in the body, no matter what form you take in your carbohydrates, most of them are converted into a simple sugar we call glucose that circulates through your blood. We often call it blood sugar. You know, you have that little tester, you prick your finger, you get a drop of blood, you put it on the strip, and the meter reads out a little number. It's telling you how much sugar was in that drop of blood. Okay? So, and what they're measuring is how much of this here, this glucose. This glucose is circulating in your blood, and we need sugar in our blood. What do we use sugar for in our blood? Energy. Every cell in your body needs energy, right? I mean, muscle cells need energy to contract, to move those muscle fibers so that you can move. Your brain needs energy to keep the electrical potential across the neuron membrane so it can transmit nervous impulses and you can think and hear and do all of the various mental functions that your brain does for you. Every cell in your body needs it. Some need a little less. Some of the ones that are just maintaining cartilage or something are slowly making extra collagen fibers and extra, whatever proteins are needed in that particular matrix. And every cell of the body has its job, but it needs energy to do its job. And it gets its energy by taking glucose in and using it for energy. So over here, we're going to draw a cell. Now, what I'm drawing here is just the cell wall here. This is the edge of the cell. And this is inside the cell over here, and this is outside the cell. Now, inside the cell, when the glucose gets inside, there are special structures whose job is to get the energy. You can sort of think of it like a furnace or a stove where you burn the fuel. Draw one here. Called mitochondria, but you can just think of them as the little powerhouses, the energy generators. They basically take the glucose, which is a 6-carbon molecule with hydrogen and oxygen around it, with a high amount of energy stored in all those chemical bonds. By the way, where'd the energy come from to go in those chemical bonds? Sunlight, yeah. Sunlight shining on leaves. The world is full of leaves, and what are the leaves doing? They're taking that sunlight energy and converting it into high-energy chemical bonds, and they're building glucose and carbohydrates and many other high-energy molecules for use by the animal kingdom. Well, these high-energy molecules we take in as food, and as we eat the food, we digest it in the intestines, absorb it into the bloodstream, it flows through here, and this high-energy molecule goes into here, and there's a special set of enzymes all lined up. Wish we had time. We could spend hours just talking about how the mitochondria there's all of it, like an assembly line, and they're all arranged in a certain order on special little rods inside on these membranes that go in there. And there's different ones that take place on here and here as it goes through all the steps. It's a complex process that takes place in a very orderly way. And just instantly they can just move this molecule and take it apart, molecule by molecule, releasing the energy into a form that is transmitted in little things that carry the energy and carry them where they're actually used to move a muscle fiber or to move a little ion pump or to activate an enzyme to give it the energy to carry on a synthetic reaction or whatever just billions of complex reactions that take place in the human body that require energy is carried to them by these little carrier molecules from the mitochondria that's taken them apart. Okay, now this membrane that separates the outside from the inside of the cell is made of a substance it's impermeable to glucose. Glucose cannot pass through this membrane. There's no way for glucose to get through this membrane on its own. And so the cell must make a special way to get the glucose inside. And it builds a special little, I'm going to call it a sugar door, a way to get it in, a little door for it to come through. So we're going to draw that little door here. Now, it doesn't actually look like this. This is more symbolic or typological or whatever than it is actually how it looks. But we're going to draw a door. Okay, so we've got the little symbol here of the door. Put a little doorknob on it here. And there's our door. Now, we've got the glucose, we've got the door to get inside the cell, but we still have a problem here because the glucose doesn't actually have a way to open the door. It's got no hands. It can't open the door. So how is it going to open the door? It needs a helper. So who's the helper? Insulin. Yes. Insulin's got two hands. Takes one hand, grabs onto a glucose, takes the other hand, opens a door, and puts it inside the cell. That's what insulin does. So we're going to draw insulin here as a little man with two hands. He's got one hand coming over here. Grab this. And let's see, here's the other hand coming all the way over here to grab this door. And there, we'll give him a big smile because he likes to do that. That's just what he likes to do. Take a sugar, open the door, put it in a cell. Take a sugar, open the door, and put it in a cell. That's what insulin does. Put sugar inside of cells. Where does insulin come from? The pancreas. Okay, let's put a pancreas up here. Obviously, nothing in this picture is to scale, right? This is all just to understand the concept. Inside the pancreas, there's lots of different cells that have lots of different jobs. Like almost every organ in the body, it does lots of things, not just one thing. And the pancreas makes digestive enzymes, it makes hormones, it makes all kinds of things. But there's little islands of cells that have some special little cells in them whose job is to make insulin. And we call those beta cells. We'll put those there. And the beta cells, their job is to actually make and release into the bloodstream insulin. Now these beta cells are really neat little things. These beta cells have taste buds. They can taste. Yeah, they can taste how sweet your blood is. They can taste sugar. They have a very sensitive built-in glucometer, and they know exactly what your blood sugar level is, how sweet your blood is at any moment. And when the blood sugar goes up high, they say, oh, well, there's lots of sugar. Let's go feed the cells, and they put out lots of insulin. The insulin goes out and takes that extra sugar and starts putting in cells. Now, so when you eat a meal, you take in the food, it goes to your stomach and starts being digested and broken down and taken apart, goes to your intestines, it's further digested, absorbed through the intestines into the blood. And so after a meal, what happens to your blood sugar level? It's going up, right? Because we're absorbing all this sugar in. Well, as the sugar level is rising after a meal, what about these beta cells? They can sense, oh, yes, the sugar level's coming up. It's time to go feed the cells, guys. We've got food. And so out comes the insulin. And what does the insulin do? It takes all that insulin and starts putting it inside the cells. Which cells does it put it in? The ones that are hungry. Now, how does a cell tell them it's hungry? By putting out doors. Yeah, now, by the way, there's not one door on the cell. There may be anywhere from a few hundred to over 1,000 doors on a cell surface. And they're constantly changing, these little insulin receptors out there. And when a cell is very hungry, it just makes, its surface is covered with little doors. It says, please put sugar in here, I need more energy. On the other hand, once a cell is full, it's got a high energy level, it's got a lot of energy reserves, it's got a lot of glucose and energy stores in there, and it doesn't need as much, then it takes away and just has a few doors out there. And so preferentially those cells that need more energy have more doors and will get more energy. And so it's a constant thing, but this is how a cell lets you know he's hungry, by how many doors he has out there. It's kind of a neat little arrangement, isn't it? Now, for any of you who know anything about physiology, you know that I've really actually very simplified a very complex process of metabolism, of controlling energy in the body. we use glucagon, and then the body makes now we realize there's a whole bunch of other little hormones made in the walls of the stomach and the intestine, and there's some reflexes that go through the brain. It's very, very complex, but in a simple sense, this is what's going on and allows us to understand how we can reverse the process of diabetes. So now that you understand normal, we're ready to talk about the disease of diabetes, what goes wrong with normal to cause diabetes. Diabetes is two different diseases. We use the word diabetes for two different diseases, which have nothing in common other than the symptom. And what's the symptom? High blood sugar. But they're two totally different diseases with nothing in common. Type 1 diabetes, we sometimes refer to as juvenile diabetes or insulin-dependent diabetes, often strikes children. With the other type, we refer to as adult diabetes or non-insulin, but they often end up on insulin. There's a lot of confusion in a lot of names, and so the official names now have been type 1 and type 2. This type 1 diabetes accounts for only about 5 or 10% of the diabetics. 95 to 90% over here are this type 2 diabetes. This is the disease which is really devastating our country's health condition with so much, morbidity. And we're going to spend most of our time talking about this disease process. But we'll talk a little bit about both so that you understand the difference between the two, because they're totally different diseases, they're treated differently. And we'll mention first and briefly the type 1 diabetes. This diabetes, which often strikes children, is an autoimmune disease, and the problem takes place up here where for some reason we don't totally understand, there's a lot of theories, but for some reason the body's immune system is attacking the beta cells. It kills them. They're dead. They're gone. The pancreas doesn't have live beta cells in it anymore. So now what's happening? You eat a meal. What happens to the blood sugar level? Comes up, but there's no beta cells, so there's no insulin. So can the sugar get into the cell? Is that cell hungry? Yeah, it's starving. It's got doors out there. It's begging for more. But there's no way for it to get in there. And if untreated, these cells will move from just being hungry to desperate. And what do they do when they're desperate? They'll do anything to get energy. We call it auto-cannibalization. They just start eating themselves. They start taking parts of the cell organs and taking apart and using them to get energy to keep functioning. They'll do anything they can to stay alive. But in this process, it's sort of like throwing all kinds of junk in a stove. It burns smoky and it releases ketones, and the body becomes very acidotic. The patients become very sick and dehydrated, and they will die with this, disease if we don't do anything about it. And of course, what do we do? Well, it should be obvious. What's missing from this picture? Insulin. And so what do? We calculate the right dose of insulin and give them insulin shots. And every time they take a meal, they have to take another insulin shot. And they take some long-acting ones to give sort of a baseline insulin level. And now we've got little insulin pumps. And we can hook up these little pumps and we can program them. And you just type in, I ate a donut and that was this many carbs, and it gives you the right amount. And now we've got the little glucose tester, test the sugar, and now it'll kind of like your cell phone, kind of Wi-Fi, it'll automatically send the message to the thing. I test my sugars this. It'll send the message to your pump and say, oh, you need this many units of insulin. Which, okay, send the insulin. So we've done everything we can to help that situation. But the bottom line is these children are going to continue to need insulin for the rest of their life because the beta cells are gone. And so when we're talking about the reversal of diabetes, we're really not talking about type 1 diabetes. We're talking about type 2 diabetes, which falls in the lifestyle disease category. This different disease process, they're going to need to continue to take insulin. Everything we talk about lifestyle can certainly assist and help them make the best of their diabetes and avoid the complications of diabetes for as long as possible, but they're going to need to be on insulin. Now we're going to switch gears and talk about the other 95% of diabetics who have type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is what we call a lifestyle disease. What does lifestyle disease mean? It's caused by the way we live. And what are we talking about? The food we eat, our lack of exercise, and many of the things that we do in this country that tend to produce the diseases that it seems like everybody's coming down with. And when we look at those things, the biggest factor in all of the above seems to be what? Diet. Yeah, it's what we're eating that is causing this. You can go to other parts of the world where they don't have this, and nobody gets this. There are areas in Africa, and they live out in the jungle, and the only thing they eat is what they grow behind their hut in a little garden, and maybe a goat once in a while. And nobody gets diabetes. Nobody has a heart attack. Nobody has gallstones. Now, they end up with malaria and hookworm and trypanosome and a lot of other diseases because of their lack of sanity and other problems, but they don't get these same diseases we're getting. And there's areas in rural China. There's areas in the world where people do not eat what we eat, and they don't get any of these diseases. There's a lot of people are catching on to this. Probably the best thing you can read right now is that book, The China Study, where they go into great detail. They look at the facts that prove beyond a doubt that China study, the largest epidemiological study in the history of the world. There is more data in this database than in any other study of any kind that has ever been done on planet Earth. And the overwhelming conclusion is that this diet makes a huge difference. Eating animal products, the meat products, the dairy products, all of this makes a huge difference in what diseases people have. And eliminating those eliminates a huge class of diseases. There's a great movie that's just come out. I'm looking forward to seeing it, but everything I've heard about it is really great, Forks Over Knives, where they look at some of these disease processes here. There's a number of doctors now that have realized both clinically and scientifically that the diet that God gave the human race 6,000 years ago of fruits, vegetables, grains, and seeds is still the ideal diet for not only preventing disease, but reversing disease and turning it around. But now if you look at the diet that we eat in this country, what is wrong with it? What is it that we're eating that's so bad? Too much sugar, too much oil, too much fat, too many burgers, French fries. It's just too much of everything. We are just calorie overloaded, supersized. Everything is, there's too much of this going in. And then on top of this dietary overload, what about our exercise level? Yeah, our exercise level is down to here. We don't run, work outside and get a strong physical exercise like, in generations past in this world, people have had to pretty much rely on their physical strength to do everything they needed to do to survive. And now we don't even walk anymore. We drive in cars. Everything, transportation is automated. We've got machines to do our chores, and somebody does this. It's a service industry. There's always a service for everything. We can do almost nothing but sit in a chair all day, barely go to work and back or something, but yeah, almost no exercise. And you put that huge dietary overload with a lack of exercise, and we get a whole group of diseases that just permeates this country right here. And this type 2 diabetes is one of those. Now, when we talk about the diet here, I told you I was going to give you 2 sentences. I'm going to give you the first sentence right now. The sentence has to do with the diet. And you can answer pretty much any question you have about, well, what should I eat or what shouldn't I eat, or is this okay or not okay, with this one sentence. If you think about this one sentence, it pretty much simplifies anything you need to know about diet down into one thing. So are you ready to? Okay, the sentence is this: whole plant foods eaten whole. whole plant foods eaten whole. Let's try to say it together. Can y'all say that? Whole plant foods eaten whole. Okay, now think about that sentence for a minute there. What does that sentence mean? Well, you saw the word in there, plant foods. Y'all know what plant foods are? What's a plant? It has a stem and roots and leaves and puts out flowers and fruits and seeds, right? That's plant, okay? Then what is not plant? Well, the animals are. What's that? If it has, legs, feathers, fins, if it has eyes, if it has a mother, these things are not plant, okay? And so in the diet that works, we go over here, the plant food, which was the diet that God gave to the human race when he said, I've created you and have given you all of these things for food, right? What did he say? Yeah, all the fruits, the plants, the seeds, this is to be your food. And it's still true. We still are genetically related to Adam and Eve, the first human beings he created to live on that diet. And even though we're badly deteriorated, our underlying genetics is still designed to process a plant-based diet, not an animal-based diet. Now, in that sentence, you saw whole plant foods eaten whole. We had the word whole in there twice. Why this emphasis on whole? Well, you can take something that's really good and you can take it to a factory and you can ruin it. You can make it bad. We can process things in a factory, refine them, take all the good stuff out and take one refined chemical back and then put that into the diet in various forms. Let's take an example of corn. Corn, is that a good food? Yeah, it's a whole plant. Sweet corn. We can't wait in the spring till early summer when are getting out the first sweet corn. And I love that sweet corn. And it's full of nutrients, minerals, vitamins, essential fatty acids, all kinds of things that are really very good for you. And when you eat that good corn, how many ears can you eat at a meal? Well, now you can take that same corn to a factory and you can process it and make it into corn oil. Now, how do you make corn into corn oil? Well, you take off all the fiber, the carbohydrate, the protein part. You take off the vitamins, the minerals. It's got a lot of important vitamins. They take them out. Like, have you ever bought these little vitamin E capsules? An essential antioxidant to help you protect your body from all kinds of bad things. Do you know where they get the vitamin E to put in those capsules? It's a byproduct. It's one of the things they took out of the corn to make the corn oil, yeah. So they've taken all of the good stuff out of the corn oil, and they've got just this one chemical, the pure corn oil, and now they're going to add that back into the diet in excess. And think, besides the other things that we can do, we could spend lectures talking about all of the oxidative damage and free radicals and everything that happens on the corn, on the free oils. But pushing all of that stuff aside, just think of the concentration factor. How many ears of corn does it take to make 1 spoon of oil? About 15 ears of corn makes 1 spoon of oil. Or corn oil, margarine, whatever you're using, whatever form you're using it on. But one spoon of oil is about 15 ears of corn. Now, how easy is it to have a spoon of oil in your meal? Well, if you have a little bit of salad dressing, you've probably got a spoon of oil there, and maybe a little bit on the vegetables, some margarine. Now, we're talking about what most people would call a low-fat meal so far, right? Salad, vegetables, a potato, something like that, right? We've already got 3 spoons of 3 spoons of oil. How many ears of corn is that? 45. Have any of you ever eaten 45 ears of corn at a meal? Well, actually, you did if you had even 3 spoons of oil. And I'm not talking yet about the fried potatoes and the fried, stuff and all of the fried things and the amount. We can easily go over 100, maybe even up to several hundred ears of corn at a meal. Now, do you see how we're getting way more food in the body than God ever intended to be there? Way more calories, way more energy, although that's got to be processed in the body. You can do the same thing with sugar. Have you ever eaten sugar cane? You ever chewed on it? Sucked on it? It's sweet, delicious, really good. How much sugar cane can you go through before you're tired of chewing on that sugar cane stalk? You know, a few inches? Has anybody ever gone through a foot at a time? Do you know how many feet of sugar cane it takes to make a candy bar? About 30 feet. How long would it take you to go through 30 feet of sugar cane? If you had a piece of it after every meal for dessert, if you had every meal you had a piece of sugar cane for dessert, how long would it take you to have eaten 30 feet of it? Probably at least a month, right? How long does it take to eat a candy bar? A lot less than a month, right? Less than a day, how many seconds maybe does it take to eat a candy bar? Do you see how we are getting way more energy molecules in the body than God ever intended to go there? So whole plant foods, eaten whole, we can get all of these things in the right amount and the right balance. At the Weimar Institute, where we reverse diabetes very readily on this diet, they don't tell people to watch their portions, to count calories. You know what they say? Enjoy your meal. You need some more? Go back for seconds. They serve 3 meals a day, and it's a buffet style. And you can go through line and take whatever seems right to your taste at the moment. And if you want to go back for seconds, you can go back for more. And on that type of dietary plan, they reverse diabetes. People lose weight. Arteriosclerosis reverses. And you say, but how can they do that? They're not controlling how many calories. It's all controlled. It's almost impossible. You can't eat too much watermelon. You can't, it's like your body, there's enough fiber in everything that you're not going to have to worry about this metabolic overload unless you are including refined products. If you've got refined oils, refined sugars, refined protein, these factory processed stuff in your diet, then you are going to end up with overload and you're walking down the road towards, these disease processes. But the good news is that they are reversible. As much as you're walking down the road to these diseases, even if you've already got the disease, and maybe you've even gone down and now you're getting neuropathy and you're starting to lose the vision, you're getting, the complications of it. You can stop, do an about face, and you can literally walk away from this disease process. And, at the Weimar Institute, the statistics are that within 3 weeks, about 50% of the diabetics are 100% off of all medication and insulin with a normal blood sugar. There is no pill that any pharmaceutical company makes that can do that. But God's plan will do that. And every month, another 24 people go up there and go through that program and reverse their diabetes. So it's about 50% of the people are 100% well within 3 weeks. But if you extend it out to about 2 months, we're up to more like about 90%. 90% cure rate within a couple of months. These people are going diabetes year after year after year, taking pills. And what's happening? They're managing their diabetes. What does managing it get you? A little farther down the road, maybe just not quite as fast. But the disease complications, the arteriosclerosis is worsening, the heart rate of heart attacks is going up, the neuropathy is going up, the peripheral vascular disease is shutting down to the legs, the retinopathy is setting in the eyes, and your susceptibility to infection is going up. In spite of all of this treatment, diabetes gradually gets worse when you manage it with pills. But the good news is it's reversible, and it's reversible within a few weeks, a few months. The thing turns around. You have in your hands, with God's simple health plan, a more powerful healing remedy than any doctor in this country. Now think about it. God has given us a gift. He wanted the gift of healing. He's laid it right here in our hands. This is it. Now, I'd like to go through and explain to you in a simple little story way here how changing this diet changes this disease process. So we've got to understand how this disease process works. So say it's go through a little story here. Imagine it's the end of the day. You sat down for supper, nice, all your favorite foods, a nice big high-calorie meal. You've had that topped off with a dessert. And now as your meal's over, you push your chair back from the table, and what do? You go out to the living room, sit down on the couch, and get ready for exercise, right? We get out the little clicker. We got our finger exercises, flipping channels, right? How many calories can you burn with that? Finger muscle, huh? What's happening to the meal you just ate? Well, it's digesting in the stomach, it's going in the intestines, it's being absorbed into the bloodstream. What's happening to your blood sugar level? It's going up. And as it's going up here, what about the beta cells? Oh, we've got lots of calories tonight. Let's go feed the cells. We got lots of glucose. And so out comes the insulin, lots of it. And so we've got lots of glucose, lots of insulin running down. Grab the sugar, open the door, and put it in the cell, right? Oh, but tonight we've got a problem. We get down to the leg muscle, and the leg muscle says, wait a minute. We don't need any more. We're still full. Yeah, we've got plenty from lunchtime and the snacks and everything else. We are totally energy full. We don't need any more here. And we know you're not going for a walk. You haven't been doing that for months, years. We know there's no more need tonight. We don't need any more tonight. Take it somewhere else. Now, how does the leg muscle cell say that to the insulin? Remember? It takes away its doors. The muscle cells, they've taken away their doors. So now we've got a problem. We've got lots of sugar, lots of insulin, but no doors. So what are we going to do about that problem? Well, there is another place to go. And the liver is a good example. So the insulin takes the glucose over to the liver. Now the liver, he says, I don't need any more tonight either, but what about tomorrow? What if you skip breakfast? What if you have a hypoglycemic attack? We might need some energy reserves for tomorrow. I know how to store it. You know how you store food? You know how to make preserves? You take food and you can them and you can save them, put them on the shelf and save them for some other day when you don't have enough food, and then you can take it off the shelf, open it up, and serve the food. Well, that's what the liver does with glucose. It makes canned glucose. We call it glycogen. Glycogen is just canned glucose. You know how you make a glycogen? You take a glucose molecule and you stick another one on it. And then you stick another one on, you stick another one on, and you just keep more and more until you have this like a gigantic popcorn ball of glucose molecules all stuck together. That's what glycogen is. It's just a whole bunch of glucose stuck together so you can store it. And you go put it on the pantry shelf and you save it for a hypoglycemic day. And someday your blood sugar's dropping and you haven't eaten anything. The liver says, oh, blood sugar's getting low. It's got those taste buds too, those glucometers built into its cell. It says, oh, sugar's too low. No problem. I got plenty of glycogen here. Takes out the canned glucose, breaks it up, throws all the glucose back in the bloodstream. Keep your blood sugar level up. Nice arrangement, huh? But there's a problem. We keep taking more and more, and we never even get a time to get hypoglycemic. We don't skip. We're just eating from the moment we get up to we are just taking in way too many calories. What happens in the liver? Pretty soon, what happens to that pantry shelf? Pretty soon, the pantry shelf is full. Pretty soon, underneath the bed is full, and underneath the couch. And now it just piles up in the middle of the room. You can't walk through the house because there is so much of it in there. No, literally, that's what happened. You should see one of these liver cells under a microscope. You can tell what a diabetic liver cell looks like. It is just full of this glycogen. You can see it just everywhere. The cell is so overloaded with it. It says, I'd love to take some more. I can't take any more. I've got to get rid of it. And how does the cell say, I can't take any more? Same way. What does he do? He takes away all of his doors. Now we've got a really big problem, right? No doors on the muscle cells. No doors on the liver cells. but we're still eating. What are we going to do? What's the insulin going to do with all that food? Well, there's a third place to go. Know what it is? The fat cells. Yeah. They're the softies. They're the good guys. They say, nobody else wants you coming here. We'll take you in. Yeah. Maybe you don't need it tomorrow, but what about next year? We've got a better way. We don't make glycogen, canned glucose. We make fat. We take that glucose and we turn it into fat. Yeah. Did you know you can get twice as much energy in the same amount of space with fat as you can with glycogen? Yeah, it's a much better way to store energy long term. You can get much more concentrate, get much more energy in less space. And so what happens to the fat cells? Their little fat tanks get bigger and bigger and bigger, and the cells get bigger. And pretty soon the fat cell reaches its limit. It can only hold so much. And eventually the fat cell gets as big as it can get, and we're still eating. Insulin's still coming out. And the fat cell says, I'd love to take some more in, but I just can't fit any more in here. And how does he say that? The same way. He takes away all of his doors. Now we're really in bad trouble. Because we've got no doors on the muscle cells, no doors on the liver cells, no doors on the fat cells. Everybody is calorie overloaded, metabolic overloaded, too much energy in the system. But we're still eating. So what's happening to our body? The sugar level is up. Insulin level is up. Where's it going to go? It's got nowhere less to go. And the sugar level gets higher and higher and higher. And eventually, the kidneys say, we've got a problem here. We've got too much sugar in the blood. We've got to get rid of it. The kidney's job is to get rid of things we don't need in the blood, right? It filters, I guess. Well, when the sugar level gets, normally there is no glucose going out in the urine. But when it starts getting up here, the kidney says, we've got to get rid of that. And so it starts taking glucose and putting it into the urine to get it out of the body because there's just too much here. It's a waste product. We can't use anymore. We've got to get rid of it. It takes a lot of water to flush out and wash out that kind of sugar. You can't pour out just, pure white crystalline sugar. It's got to be diluted in water, solubilized, and brought out in the urine. So it takes a lot of water. So there's a lot of water coming out, a lot of sugar coming out. And what are the symptoms of diabetes? Yeah, we're thirsty. Why? Because we're dehydrated, because we're using all the water to get the sugar out. And so you start drinking a lot of water and passing a lot of urine, and somebody says, boy, you keep drinking a lot of water, and you always go in the bathroom. Are you sure you don't have diabetes? So you go down to the doctor, and the doctor does a bunch of tests, and when he's done with his testing, he comes back with his diagnosis, and he'll let you know, yep, you've got diabetes, type 2 diabetes. Now, he probably gave another little speech that went something along this line. You've got diabetes, and you've got to accept that because you are a diabetic, and you're going to have to be on medications for the rest of your life to manage this diabetes. Otherwise, some really bad things are going to happen to you. So we've got to manage you on these diets. Now, is he telling you the truth? Well, actually he is. Unless you're willing to make some changes in your lifestyle, you will continue down this road. But of course, the good news that we have to share is that, no, you don't have to be stuck with that. You can choose to change. You can choose to come back to God's diet and God's lifestyle and turn it around. You don't have to keep walking down that road to diabetes. Thousands of people have turned around their diabetes with this very, very simple program. Now, there was something else the doctor did that day besides that little speech. What was that? Come on, what do we like to do? Get out our prescription pad and write you a prescription for some pills, some medications to control your blood sugar. Do you know how those medications work? Well, there's some different ones that different works. One of the most common ones, we call them the sulfonic, gliptizide, gluburide, used to be micronase, a number of those. The way they work is right here on the beta cells. You take the pills, and these pills, they go up to the beta cells, and they say to the beta cells, make more insulin. make more insulin. I mean, they just start whipping it, make more insulin, make more. And they're just forcing, they're just, okay, and they're just pouring out all this extra insulin. Now, let me ask you a question. Did we have a problem with not enough insulin? What was the problem? No doors. Well, then how did those pills work? Well, you know our cell that had taken away all of his doors? Well, he hadn't actually taken away every last door. There were still one or two little doors, a few little doors out there. And with all this extra insulin running around, it finds those last few little doors. And it says, hey, I found a door here. Let's put some sugar in. And there's all this extra insulin is running around looking for every last little door, trying to stuff more sugar in. And what about the poor cell that's already overloaded? And he thought he had taken in all of his doors, and suddenly, there's more sugar pouring in. Where's that coming from? What's he going to do? Let me get rid of that door. Let me get rid of that door. And next time you go back to your doctor, well, I have to give you a higher dose, increase your medications. Maybe we're going to have to add a second pill. Another common pill, metformin, glucophage. You diabetics may know that one. You know how it works? Totally differently. Remember the liver cell that was stuffed full? What do you do when your house is too full of junk? You get rid of some, right? You have a garage sale. You start taking stuff out and trying to get rid of it. Well, the liver cell starts doing that when it gets full. It says, I've got too much. Somebody else needs it somewhere. I've got to clean house a little bit. And so it's got a back door, and it basically starts dumping sugar when it's that overloaded. Well, the way this pill works is it goes around to that back door that the liver cell was using to dump extra glucose, and it just locks it shut with a padlock and says, no way, you're not dumping any more sugar out in this bloodstream. We're going to control our blood sugar level. You realize we're controlling our blood sugar level by metabolically even worsening the overload inside of our cells that make up our body. Do you see why we're not really making things better by controlling the symptom that we can measure, the amount of sugar in that drop of blood? Because what are we doing with the sugar inside the cells? We're actually making it worse. And there's some others, Actos. They come down here, they work on the door. They basically take these sugar doors and just jam them open, put a door stop in and say, hey, man, doors are open. You guys go on in. There's a lot of things that we do with pharmaceutical agents to try to jam up the machinery to treat the symptom to make the amount of sugar we measure in the blood lower. And if we get it low enough, the doctor says, oh, good, we're doing a good job. We've got their diabetes under control. Their sugars are normal. Is the body really normal? No, it's all messed up. How are we going to get the body normal? How are we going to reverse this disease process? I mean, what's the problem? The problem wasn't a lack of insulin. What's the problem? No doors. I mean, type 2 diabetes is no doors. No doors equals diabetes. I mean, really, that's the definition of it. Sometimes doctors will talk about insulin resistance. You heard that term? The resistance is the cells are resisting by taking all their doors away. That's how that matches up here. That's insulin resistance. There's no doors. They've taken away all of these receptors. And there's no way to get it. So somehow we need more doors. You make a little song. We need more doors. We need more. I mean, what are you going to do is you need more doors. Well, there are no door pills. I cannot write you a prescription for door pills. I can't hook up an IV infusion and give you an IV infusion of doors. So how are we going to get more doors? Well, now, if you think about it, every cell in your body, back in the nucleus, the center of the cell, where it keeps the master plan, the DNA of everything it needs to do, it has in there all the instructions it needs to make doors. It knows how to make doors. They've been making them for decades before you got diabetes. Your cells know how to make doors. What we got to do is change their mind and make them want to make doors. Now, how are we going to get the cell to change its mind and want to make doors? Remember back at the beginning, what kind of cells had lots of doors? Hungry cells. Hungry cells have lots of doors. how are we going to make this cell hungry? If we make this cell hungry, he'll make doors, right? But he's not hungry, is he? He's not the least bit hungry. He is so overloaded, he's actually taking... By the way, you know what these muscle cells do when they're so overloaded with sugar? They do the same thing that fat cells do. They start taking all that extra sugar and making it into fat. And there's actually fat molecules inside a muscle cell. Now, that's not normal. If you look at a normal muscle cell, you don't see fat inside of it. But if you look at a diabetes patient, if you take a muscle biopsy and look at it, you will see intracellular fat in the muscles. In other words, normally there was no fat. Fat is in a fat cell, right? Adipose tissue. But under the microscope, if you look at a diabetic's muscle cell, their muscle cell is full of fat. There is fat inside between the muscle fibrils and the mitochondria. Inside the cell is full of fat in there. It is so overloaded with energy, it's not about, he says, I don't need any more, I go full of glucose, I'm full of fat in here. I says, I don't need any more energy. And so he's got no doors. So how are we going to turn this around? How are we going to make this cell hungry? We've got to get rid of all of that fat and sugar. We've got to burn it up. We've got to use it up. How are we going to do that? Huh? Yeah. We need to exercise. You ready for your second sentence? Okay, this is your second sentence for reversing diabetes. Okay, here it is. Walk, 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 walk. Many times you want to walk, 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 walk. That is sentence number 2. Get out and exercise, move. And what happens as you are walking? With each step, what's happening? Every time the muscles contract, that has to use up some energy, right? And step by step, you're working at getting rid of this energy. And for some people, we notice major changes very soon. Some people, it takes a few days. Some people, a few weeks. Sometimes a month or more, depending on the amount of exercise and the length they're doing, how bad the fat reserves were and everything inside the muscle cells. But at some point, if they keep walking, and whole plant foods eaten whole, because they're not getting this huge overload, they're just getting normal load coming in, what's going to happen? Eventually, one day they're walking along and this muscle cell has used up the last bit of energy in there, but you're still walking. And suddenly, it needs energy and it doesn't have any. He says, hey, I need energy. And I'm sorry, we got no doors. How are we going to get it? Oh, well, we better start making doors. And so the nucleus of the cell says, okay, and it starts sending out all the instructions and getting the little factories, the ribosomes going, and they start building more sugar doors and putting them out on there for you. And pretty soon the sugar doors come back. And once the sugar doors come back, then the normal food load we're taking easily goes into the cells, and sugar levels come right back to a normal position. Do you see how we've reversed diabetes? Diet, exercise. Remember the 2 sentences? What are they? Whole plant foods, eaten whole. And what's the other one? Walk, 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 walk. Often there's some questions about exercise. How much? How far? Do I have to walk? Can it be something else? Anything that moves a muscle works. You can be hoeing in the garden. You can be swimming, riding a bike. We have had people, with leg problems that have done it all with just upper body exercise. As long as you use the muscles, burn it up, you can turn this process around. We often just say walk, 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 because that's something simple and something that's fairly safe that most people can do. Rollerboarding, skateblading, skiing, all of these are great exercises, but you make more business for me in the ER that way. There's a lot, very prone to accident with a lot of things, particularly with the condition of diabetics. You don't want them doing dangerous things. You want them doing really safe things. It's also not very expensive. A good pair of shoes is about all it takes to participate. How far? We tell people, start with whatever level you're at that's comfortable. Walk as far as you can normally walk comfortably today. And then tomorrow, you're going to walk that far, plus you're going to walk a few steps farther. and turn around and go back. And the next day you're going to walk that far plus a few steps more. And just keep gradually, slowly increasing it. The key is you're doing it every day. Sometimes we see people that go out, oh, I'm going to make those cells hungry, and they just push themselves way past their limit, and the next morning, what? Oh, I am so sorry. There's no way I'm going to move today, and it's never going to work if you do that. You actually have to go out and every day be burning energy through physical activity to make it work. We have seen people reverse their diabetes at even 20 and 30 minutes of exercise a day. Most people take a little more than that. A mile a day is very good for reversing. 2-3 miles. You know, if you're getting over 5 miles, you're probably overdoing it in terms of, you know, what we need to for maintaining metabolic stuff. But between 1 and 3 miles a day, that range right there is usually pretty much we can reverse, you know, most people at those levels will reverse at that level. A mile is a mile is a mile. Whether you walk the mile or jog the mile or sprint run that mile, the formula for energy consumption is actually weight times distance. In other words, your body weight moving this distance burns this many calories, uses that many glucose molecules. And so you can walk at a slower speed. You're still burning the energy. It's just taking you longer. You can stop and take a rest and then go a little farther. It's the total distance you put in as long as you keep moving. You can break it up. You can do a little bit in the morning, a little bit in the middle of the day, a little bit in the evening. You don't have to do it all in one stretch for it to work. As long as you can get to the end of the day and you look back over the day and say, yep, I did this much exercise, you've burned that many calories, and you're that much farther along this road to reversing and turning around this disease process. So now you know the truth about diabetes. Those 2 sentences, you can bring people back to God's plan and simply turn around this devastating disease that is, you know, they're estimating that within the next thing, it'll probably affect 1 out of every 3 people. Will have sometime in their lifetime will have a diabetic problem. It's just really devastating how far-reaching and how extensive this disease is. And every year, the incidence of diabetes goes up and up and up. And they keep doing all of these programs and putting a lot of attention and national. It's still, every year, it's getting more and more and more. It's faster and faster, a larger and larger percentage of the population. So you have no shortage of opportunity in your home church and in your community to really be a service and be God's healing hand for turning around a very devastating disease process.